Hi, you guys. I'm here with Floyd Wills. He's the author of The Red-Headed Giants of Lovelock Cave and Other Mysteries. It's his book. That's awesome. Welcome aboard, Mr. Floyd.
Thank you, Nikki. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank you and your audience for having me on.
What's the difference between the Watchers and the Nephilim, in your opinion? Are they the same thing or different?
From my research and my understanding, the Watchers, they were supposed to watch over us, protect humankind, and they disobeyed the Creator. And there was a group of 200 of them, and they made a pact to have sexual relations with the women of the earth. And in exchange for that, they also gave us technology. They gave us knowledge that I believe that the Creator didn't want us to have. And as a result of the interbreeding with the earth women, then it created the Nephilim, the fallen ones. And
Okay.
they were the giants, and
So you think that
they were
basically,
bloodthirsty. That's kind of where I'm coming.
so you're thinking like the Nephilim are the children of the Watchers, or like and men together. And in that, okay, but do you think that we as current humans have any of that DNA in us still?
I believe that it's very possible. I believe that there are bloodlines. And, even in the Bible, it talks about bloodlines of the giants. Goliath supposedly was descendant of the Raphaim, which is of the giant. So there were bloodlines that I believe, my personal opinion, that exist to this day. And I believe the elite also have a belief in these bloodlines. And
Right.
yes, I do believe they still exist to this day.
Kind of like a royalty thing or whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So, and do you think like the whole, okay, it's interesting because it's very it's there's so many rabbit holes you can go down this, but I mean, like in your book you talk about like the Nagas in India, and you talk about like the just basically all the ways in which like the reptilian kind of situation like can man or has kind of shown itself in different culturally, whether that's from like Adam and Eve, like the serpent in the garden, or like all the way down to like the Nagas in India or whatever. And then now we have like the whole stories of extraterrestrials and stuff. So are you thinking that these are actually maybe related to the Watchers themselves, or you think these are part of the Nephilim, or like
They
part of that
could,
branch, or what do you think?
yeah, I'm totally open-minded. I don't think anyone has the answers to that. I definitely think there could be a connection to the Nephilim. I'm also of the mind that, I believe that God created many other intelligent species besides us. And I believe that there are other extraterrestrial races out there. So I'm
Well,
pretty
yeah,
open.
like you also go into little people, which like
The
I'm like
little people.
not enough people go into the little people,
Oh
but
my
the little
gosh.
people are a thing.
They are a thing. It's very fascinating because um, I wasn't intending to write about them, and then I was compiling a lot of old newspaper articles on giant skeleton discoveries, and then I started coming across some pygmy skeletons, and I'm like, well, this is really weird. And I found some articles in Tennessee of the discovery of these little pygmy skeletons. And one particular article in the book I reference, they found like 75,000 of these things on this guy's farm, and none of them were taller than 3 feet. And the native tribes, particularly the Cherokee, well, actually, most Native American tribes have stories about little people and giants.
Yeah.
The Cherokee have a lot of
Yeah,
stories
what
of
was
the
the
little
name of
people.
those? Like I just read that earlier today in your book. I can't
There's
remember.
quite a different names. I know there was the moon-eyed people that the Native Americans thought lived underground. They couldn't see in the direct sunlight. There was a tribe the Arapahoes talked about. I can't pronounce the native, and they were cannibals, and they were these little
Yeah, the
little
cannibal
people.
little
So
people. Yeah, I just read about
the
those things.
cannibal little people, yeah. And so from tribe to tribe, they describe them differently. With some of the little people being like more mischievous, and you know, some of them are kind of harmless. But if you disrespected them, you know, they would, you know, play tricks on you. And there were other descriptions of them being very violent, and like the Arapaho tribe that talked about the little cannibal dwarves.
Well, I
So.
mean, and to me that's so fascinating because, okay, like I've actually seen some fairies and a dwarf and an elf kind of thing in real life, but those are like more some mystical things that have happened to me, which I can get into that in a minute. But this one is like, okay, I was in Mahabalipuram in India, and there was a family of maybe like 30 or 40 of like, I would call them equivalent to maybe gypsies, like in Europe. I don't know what they were, but they were like a traveling group of beggars. Like I don't know. I know that sounds kind of, I don't know. I don't know how else to word it. Like that's just kind of what it was. And anyway, so we were at like this
Right. Yeah, I
festival,
get it.
and like people were, everybody's like in India, they don't have swimsuits. They just like go into the ocean like in their clothes and stuff. And there's like
Hmm.
random cows walking around, and you just buy like a corn on the cob, and
Hmm.
it's, I don't know, it's very interesting. It's fun, but like I was like telling my friend, I was like, oh my God, I gotta take a picture. But I was like, I don't want to be rude and be like, oh my God, look at these. They were little people, like I'm talking like 2.5 feet to, and I'm not not like little people like, I don't know what's technically correct to say or not, but not, they don't have dwarfism, or they were anatomically identical
Hmm.
to uh, us, but like, and they were not children. They were not
Right.
children. Like there was like a bro with like big full blown mustache who's like 2.5 feet walking around,
Wow.
and I'm going, I like, we need to take pictures of these people. Like this is crazy. And I mean, I got a couple of pictures, but they just, I don't know. Then it's kind of like you're showing someone's identity, and I don't know. But I was so amazed. I was like, these are actually like little people, like really, these are little people. And my friend's like, I know, stop staring at them, just like, it's okay, like just stop staring at them. And I'm like, huh, wow. But I mean, like that, it's so weird because like I don't know what you do with that, because it wasn't just one or two of them. There was girls, boys. They were like from like all, like there was like 40 of them, or 30 or 40 in this like group. Anyway, so
That's
I think
super
there's really,
fascinating.
yeah, it's super fascinating. And nobody in India seemed to be that bothered by it. It was just like whatever, you know.
Right. Yeah,
I
I heard also the same thing when you talk about UFOs and stuff over there, extraterrestrial races. A lot of people are like, it's like not a big deal because they believe in these ancient civilizations. You know, it's like, oh, that's old news to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you go around some of their ruins and stuff, they don't even try to date things. They don't even try to like label when this is from or what that, like it's just like, yeah, just walk around all the stones. It's like we have no idea, or if we, are we there's no signs about things, and they don't even try to tell you who, where, when, what, or how, which is actually in a way kind of refreshing.
Yeah, and some of their religious texts on Mahabharata, they talk about the Vimanas, the flying, these things. You read some of these descriptions, and it sounds like, wow, this is like spaceships flying around, you know, destroying cities, these giant aerial battles going on. I mean, it sounded like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, and like I don't know, I think that might be. So my thing with the ETs and the UFO stuff is, I almost kind of feel like the fact that they're from here or whatever is a distraction, like because they're here, they're
Yes.
currently here.
Hmm.
So maybe they have always been here. Maybe they've been here longer than we've been here. So I don't know who they are or where they go at night, but when they're not out and about, like making intentional sightings for people. Sylvie from her YouTube is called Yorth. She did Sardinia. She went there, and
Oh, neat.
the Domus de Jonas is what they call them, which is like the fairy houses. And there's all kinds, like thousands, and she like documented a ton of them in her videos. Like she has a whole Sardinia series there where, and this was like I think from 2017 or something. She goes into like there's all these like they're megalithic structures, but they're like way too little for humans to live in. They call them fairy houses, but I don't know, maybe I don't know what they were, but I think, yeah, I mean, half the time I think we're living in we might have actually been more closer to Lord of the Rings than we think.
That's so true. And I think it was Graham Hancock says that the further we look back in our history, the more it looks like it's a fairy tale, like, compared to what we've been told, because there's just so many things that you can't explain. And I really believe a lot of the myths and legends that are out there, there's truth behind them. Again, like with the little people and all these Native American tribes, they talk about little people, they talk about giants. And then we have the discovery of the Flores Hobbit back in the early 2000s in Indonesia. And they discovered a race of these little people, not much taller than 3 feet. And they had a brain that was smaller than a chimpanzee, but they were intelligent. They had tools, weapons. They knew how to make fire. Just fascinating. And they actually have skeletal remains of these little people. And in fact, over there in Indonesia, they still believe they exist. And they call them Ibu Gogu, which means grandmother who eats everything, because they have ravenous appetites. And apparently, some of the villages in Indonesia, they would give them food, and they would put them on like pumpkin plates. And apparently, they would leave it out in the jungle, and they would come and they would eat all the food, and they would eat the pumpkin shell plates that they put the food on. So.
Oh, that's funny. Iceland like has like a lot. I can't. I think it's the highest percentage of a population that believes in elves and fairies or something like that. And like, there's a lot of, there's a lot of legends and stuff with that. I mean, and same thing with like, or you have like Tuatha De Danann or something like that in Ireland and in Scotland. And I mean, there's and then I go into this whole, and you kind of touch on this in your book, it's like the dinosaurs and men, like kind of having some similarities together. I think dragons and dinosaurs are the same thing. I just don't really understand like why they can't be the same thing. And I've gone to that, it's called Glen Rose, and it's that's the town, and it's there's a river that's got a bunch of footprints of dinosaurs and humans together and stuff. And so I've gone on a dig with the paleontology team there, and
Neat.
I don't know, I wasn't 100% convinced by the human footprints, because like I need myself some 5 toes and like a and they look a little bit like human, but I mean not a dead ringer. So I'm still kind of like on that one.
Up in the air on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fascinating, because I remember as a young boy, I had a book on dinosaurs, and in that book, there was a picture of almost like a reptilian looking creature, and it was called a dinosaurid, and it was by a Canadian, I think he was a paleontologist, that theorized that if the dinosaurs weren't killed off by the giant meteorite that struck the Earth 65 million years ago, his theory was that at least some dinosaurs would have evolved into a humanoid type being, very similar to us, some type of reptilian creature. And so he had a statue made of this thing, and it had big eyes, and it had long arms, and it had 3 fingers and 3 toes. And I remember seeing that picture, and I found it online again, and then I compared it like a side by side with the Nazca mummy. And I'm like, wow, like this thing looks, I think one of the mummies, one of the first ones was Maria, I think is what they called her. And she had the 3 fingers and the big eyes and no nose and no ears. But I was looking at that theoretical picture of this dinosaurid, and then looking at the Nazca.
I was going to show
yes.
picture of her in here.
Yes, and there's also a picture of the dino. Yeah, look at that, and the bone scan. You can see all the bones and everything.
Yeah, it's very much looks like something out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Absolutely, and I think there's a picture in there too of there's more. There's a hand with a metal implant. That's pretty wild. But I think there's also a picture in there somewhere of the dinosaurid too that I was describing, and it has
Oh,
three
well,
fingers
there's
and it has
a detail. It's almost like a scale, like
yes,
in
right.
yeah. Oh, here's the dinosaur.
Yes, right there. See, it's got the three fingers. It's got the big eyes. Really no ears. Yeah, to me, I looked at that and I thought, wow, that looks kind of similar to at least some of the Nazca mummies. I thought that was interesting.
Like sort of systematic cover up and or ignoring and or dismissal, the systematic 100% you can say dismissal of any of these ideas or bodies of evidence or whatever. It's that whole, like, I think you even said it in your book, like you worded it like, when there's a smoke there's a fire.
Yes.
And I do feel like, okay, what's the like, what, like, who cares if there was a giant, like, who really cares? Like, it's not like
Mhm.
it's like like, would you go like, oh my god, everything we've read is untrue? You'd be like, no, everything, or some of the, like, it's in so many of our ancient legends, like, nobody would be, it wouldn't change anybody's paradigm. Everybody would be like,
Right.
oh, cool, huh?
Yeah.
So I
I
don't understand, like, why the information does not, or why the evidence gets taken. I don't understand why this is. And
yeah,
it's too many cases for it to be nothing.
you're absolutely right. And and just the research I did for my book, an example I told you about the giant skull that MK Davis took a picture of. I have it in my book, that was at the Humboldt Museum that's no longer there. Well, I actually found another article of a giant skeleton find in Texas, and it had a picture of a giant skull. It has like three skulls, and this one is almost like twice the size of the other two. In the article, and I'm like, wow, this thing is enormous. And I like the article because it actually has a photo of the skull. It actually
Right.
has a photo of the skull. And then I did a side-by-side comparison. I'm like, this was the Lovelock skull from MK Davis. This is the Texas skull. And the structure, the facial structure looks very similar. Like, I'm like, wow, like this looks like it could have been like of the same race. And interesting, the Texas skull, which they call it the Moorhis skull, because it was found at a mound they called Moorhis Mound.
Mm.
Well, incidentally, that skull is not available to the public. And I was doing research on that, and another researcher contacted someone at like Texas University inquiring about that. And the response was, oh, the skull's not lost. It's just not really on public display. And oh, it's large, but it's not giant. I think maybe it was a poor reconstruction job that made it look so big. Right? That was the answer. Like it looks so
Yeah,
big
I mean, there's
because
so much skullduggery. It's like
oh,
this whole, it's insane. It's like, there's in Waco, Texas, there's like this nursery herd of like these like 16 woolly mammoths that like died instantly with their like 8 juveniles in their tusk. And then supposedly that's like 60,000 years ago, and then like there's a saber-toothed tiger that died, and a camel that died, and another big woolly mammoth that died, but they all happen to die in the same place, but thousands of years apart and stuff. You're just kind of going like, what? I mean, like, it's, to me it's a giant, and they don't, and they, you know how they explain the nursery herd with the 8 babies? They explain it by saying that they must have got caught up in a flood. And I'm like, if they were in a flood, they wouldn't have been found together. And then you can't see this.
right.
They left a couple of mammoths like in place and built a building on top of it, but the nursery herd they took away, and you can't see it.
Interesting.
You have to go to the like, well, I don't know. I went to the Waco little museum thing that's part of the thing. They're not there display. They're like in the back rooms of other stuff. But like, I don't understand like why you didn't just why you would ever take them out. Why don't you just leave them as they were found and build the cover? You built the cover over these other things there. Like, why don't you
Mhm.
build the cover over the way in which they were circled found? Like, that would be so cooler. It'd be so much
Yeah.
better. I mean, I don't know. This kind of stuff boils my blood. But I
It,
mean, okay. I mean, the skullduggery also of just yeah, I don't know. What about Sasquatch? Like, who, I mean, like, maybe it really is like these are like, the mounds, okay? There's so many. Even I talked to Greg Little on here, who's like a American mound expert guy,
yeah,
and
great
he was talking.
researcher.
Yeah, he's a great researcher. and an amazing Twitterer too. He like is always, I'm like looking at mounds every day because of Greg Little. But he's got some good books. Anyway, he was talking about how even the percentage of 7-8 foot of tall people that were found in these mounds, like even if you don't want to say that they're like giants by giant, like, you know, however many standard sizes, they're 16, 25 feet, like not that kind. He's like, that percentage is like higher per capita of skeletons that we found than exists in our current society. You know, like you don't have, how many 7-footers do we have? Like I don't personally have any friends that are 7 feet. I've seen maybe a couple in my life. That's, you know,
right.
Yeah. So
the whole subject of Sasquatch is very, very interesting. In fact, I live in Washougal, Washington, and in Oregon, it's probably, I don't know, maybe a 45-minute drive. I'm trying to think. In Boring, Oregon, there's a North American Bigfoot Museum, and it's just this cool museum, and it's got, you know, the history of Sasquatch, and it has all these castings of different footprints and things. And they actually just added a new section on the Ibu Gogu. They actually have a little section on the little people, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, I mean, I remember going through there and just reading all these different accounts, different Native American accounts, and just so many people have allegedly encountered, you know, these things and evidence of it. I know Jeff Mildrum, I believe his name. He is, I don't know if he's an anthropologist, I believe, but he's done a lot of work on the Bigfoot. He believes absolutely that they exist. So
yeah, I mean, like there's just that Bigfoot is a whole other subtopic of things to get into, but I mean, like, and I've gone down that rabbit hole too. I like, you know, I like that rabbit hole. But the thing is like, I mean, we, like I said, like we have cousins, okay? We're not like Homo sapien is not the only thing ever, and even if they're hiding from us or they're all dead, I don't know, but there has been times where hell or high water, we've had other kinds of hominids that have walked this planet.
Interbreeding, and you talk about the Denisovans. I mentioned them in the book. When they first discovered Denisovan remains was in 2010 in Siberia. They found a knuckle bone and a tooth. It was so large that the archaeologists that found it thought it was a cave bear. And then they did the testing on it and determined that, yeah, this is another hominid species. And they also found some tools. They found like a bracelet that had these little like 8-millimeter holes that had been drilled into it, the stone bracelet. So it was an advanced technology that these peoples had. And this like 40,000, 50,000 years ago.
Here's the thing, and I need to do a deep dive and like a presentation on this, but it's like beads are like, I have a giant like rock grinder outside, and like I make a lot of like you know, like cabochons and stuff like that, and I'm a rock hound. I like go hunt for agate and crystals and all stuff, and I like to grind them and saw them in half and cut them and stuff. Do you know how much work it is to make a little bead? Just
I
like
couldn't imagine.
People take this stuff for granted. You think that this like these little stone beads with like that are identical with this, you think that's like nothing? These little stone beads people wear? No, like we have extremely advanced, like these, look how tiny these things are. Like we have extremely advanced machinery that makes these. And then we find all of this stuff with like, you know, I can't remember. I was somewhere in like there's like I was looking at some of the jewelry when I was in Egypt, and it is like just very uniform beadwork of like lapis lazuli, and you're going, hey, this is just as impressive as any of your pots and your bowl and your giant sarcophagi or boxes that you guys are all talking about. Like this is not just like you hand chisel the little tiny piece. You know, like you had to have some kind of machinery
precision.
to make a stone bead. Like a stone bead is like a very big deal, but it's super tiny, but it's a big deal. I don't think people really have tuned into that yet. But
no, that's an interesting point you bring up, because we're all fixated on the big monuments, you know, like, oh, look at these giant statues and the pyramids and everything. But yeah, you gave the perfect example of this intricate little jewelry that you know, if you don't have any idea of what it takes to construct or make something like that, and just the level of technology and skill, you know, to create that is amazing.
the Etruscans had this thing called granulation, which is little itty bitty tiny little itty bitty like microscopic little gold balls, and then they would form them into like a design and then like get it to like flash melt into a jewelry thing. We weren't able to replicate that until maybe 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there's a bunch of really museums, like Dallas Museum of Art has like a big Etruscan jewelry thing. Like I've been to a couple places in Italy that have them. They're very rare, but they're super intricate jewelry things that, you know, chicks are all about. But no, like you all need to be all about that, because it was a kind of metallurgy that wasn't, that like we could literally didn't figure out again until the mid 2000 teens.
That's astounding.
Yeah. So, you know, it's just one of those things where I think to myself, yeah, advanced tooling for sure.
Yeah, advanced tooling. And again, we were talking about just the different hominid species. And, you know, according to what the historians tell us, you know, anthropologists tell us, you know, our ancestors came out of Africa 60,000 years ago. And, you know, we had encountered already, the Neanderthals were in Eurasia. They had been out there for a long time, and we were interbreeding with Neanderthals. And in fact, many of us have Neanderthal DNA in us. But not only that, that the Denisovans were around, and they were interbreeding with Neanderthals and our ancient ancestors. So we have these different hominid species interbreeding. So what kind of, you know, what kind of variations, what kind of offspring, you know, would that
Yeah,
produce?
sure. I mean, and then you have like that the dragon man skull that they found in China, you know, which,
Yes, I
yeah.
have a replica that is right here. This is allegedly,
Okay.
I got this out of the UK, that supposedly I was assured is a replica of the
A
Homo
big head.
longi, which came out of the gentleman hid it in a well, right?
Yeah.
He hid it in a well for generation, for decades and decades, and then on his deathbed, he revealed to his children where it was, and then they went and retrieved it. But this is supposedly a replica.
How long before do you think that's going to become a thing that just that was a news article that no one talks about, no one knows
Mm-hmm.
where that skull is, like da 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 da. Like I mean I totally can see that happening. Like 50 years from now they'll be like the what? The Dragon Man skull. Yeah, I think it was just a, yeah, it was like a chimp.
You're exactly right, and it's the same thing like with the Nazca mummies. I think they came on the scene in 2017, and still a lot of people haven't heard of them, don't know anything about the Nazca mummies. So when is that gonna get traction, if
That
ever?
yeah, I don't feel like anything gets traction like via mainstream methods at this point. Like you just have to like, this is how you get traction with stuff like that. Like, yeah.
Well, it was like the example that you provided, where you know, in your travels, you were fortunate enough to see those unusual skulls, you know,
Mhm.
and the tribe or the town that had them, they're like, no, you can't take pictures, you can't, you know, they were guarding them because they knew, you know, that those can be taken away from them. And along those same lines, I discovered at the Humboldt Museum where the skulls of the red-haired giants were. In fact, I found a blog of individuals that were writing on this blog that claimed that they had seen not only the skulls back in the 50s at that museum, but someone even said they actually had one of the mummies in the basement, and it was like 8 feet. It was 8 feet long, and they said they'll never forget it had the long red hair, and they said even on the hands they could still see the nails on the hands. And so that's someone that claimed they actually saw a mummy that was there. Who knows? You know, was that true? And if so, whatever happened to that?
Yeah. I mean, that's well, that's, I mean, that's the thing is like we just get to hear stories of people who got to see stuff, you know. It's like I've heard a bunch of podcasts and things of people who claim to have seen this like juvenile Bigfoot that was shot like in Michigan or something, and it was on display in the 60s for like a year. It went to this like in this series of towns, and there's like two or three people have come forward and been like, I saw that when I was in middle school, you know.
Mhm.
We like, they had him on ice and you could go and look at him, and then now it's just like it never existed. It was never a thing. And Yeah, I mean the mounds themselves are interesting because like there's so many artifacts, like the Creek Stone,
Mhm.
what is it? It's like I always forget
The
the
Bat Creek Stone or something.
yeah, it's
Bat
got
Creek
writing
Stone.
on it. It's a little stone
Yes.
like this big, has writing. Oh, there's a replica of it, but the actual stone itself is nowhere to be found. It's gone. It's
Right.
missing. They're all missing. You know,
Yeah.
like what you the like some Native American writing, which you claim that there didn't exist. You find some writing on a stone, and it's oh, I don't know. That's weird. That's weird.
Yeah, there's an example that I use in my book. I'm an old like sci-fi movie buff. I love sci-fi fantasy movies, and one of the original did you see the original Planet of the Apes movie? The original with Charlton Heston?
Yeah, but not since high school. It's been a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this scene, but I referenced it in my book. It was kind of at the tail end of the movie. Taylor, who was the main character, he was trying to escape the apes that were trying to kill him
Hmm.
because he was a talking human, and in that world, most humans were mute,
Like
right?
apes today.
The
Yeah.
humans were like, yeah, it was the reverse, and so he was trying to flee from the apes, and he had taken one of the chimpanzee scientists as hostage and brings him into an area called the Forbidden Zone. And the Forbidden Zone was like an archaeological site,
Yeah,
and they
there
were
was
digging up like human remains and things like that. Well, Cornelius was a friendly chimpanzee. He was showing the discoveries, and he was like, "Well, look, here are some eyeglasses, and look, there's a little doll here." And the other chimpanzee scientist, he's looking, Dr. Zayas, he's like, "Oh, any ape toy maker could make something like that. Like, that's no big deal." But then it was handled, and it was a talking doll, and it had a little voice recording. It was going mama, 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 which was beyond the technology of the apes and the chimpanzees. And here it was in their face, like, this is a level of technology that exceeds us, that this civilization had. And so anyway,
I think that's a beautiful example because there are things that I think we're looking at and we don't know
you don't
how to use
understand.
them or trying to understand, and we don't know what we're looking at.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so when the main character, he flees the scene, and then Dr. Zayas and Cornelius are there, and Cornelius is like, "Well, what do you want me to do with the cave?" And he goes, "Dynamite it, blow it up." And so they put dynamite and they blew the whole cave up, because the evidence that was in that cave totally contradicted their whole history, their whole religious system, everything. And so the easiest way to deal with it, you seal the cave up, you blow it up, cover it up.
And isn't this like right when they see the Statue of Liberty on the beach, or
That was the next scene,
that was
yeah,
the
where
next
he
thing?
kind of
Okay, yeah.
figures it out, and damn you all to hell, and he figures out, like, oh my gosh, we blew ourselves up. It was a
Yeah, and he's
disaster.
in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, that's super crazy. Even though I mean, I've told this story lots on my podcast. I'll tell you, it's a crazy story, but
Yeah.
this is something that happened to me in 2020. Um, no, this is like maybe 2021. So my niece is 10 now. And she was 8 at the time. So yeah, it was like 2 years ago. We went walking in some like this like it's an area with natural woods in it, like meaning like they haven't ever developed it in this area. And I'm in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And uh I just decided not to I don't take my phone when I'm walking because I just want to like just whatever. So like
Yeah.
we're walking around like in these woods, like on this little path in the woods. And I hear like some rustling and I stop and I make her stop. And then I kind of start, okay, I hear rustling. We look over, there's a little person like this big, like a foot big, and they're skinny. So I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was an elf or a gnome or something. And I was
Wow.
like, what do you see? What do you see? She was like, a little man with a broom. And he had it almost like he had a foxtail or something on the end of this broom, and he was like sweeping up. And I crouched down, and I'm maybe 6 feet from him, not that far from him. And he's not looking over at us, but I was like, hey, hello, can you hear it? Hello. And he would stop sweeping and just kind of look around. And then we would kind of be quiet and he'd start sweeping again. And he started flashing in and out of visibility, like the movie The
Wow.
Predator. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes he was visible, and then like a couple seconds later he would be literally just invisible in front of our eyes, and he'd reappear in front of our eyes. And like we would say stuff like, hey, we're not going to hurt you, like, you know, I just like want to say hello, blah blah blah. I'm not so sure he was aware that we were there. He never looked at us. So I don't even know if he was there or not. But anyway, eventually he disappeared for good, and then we walked on, and I was just like like not okay. And my niece was just like, that's cool. Yeah, that was really cool.
Wow.
And so anyway, I thought about that a lot over the last 2 years. And I really, the thing that's the most compelling about that to me is the visibility and invisibility, visibility and invisibility. Like this maybe makes me think we might be living on different light spectrums. We might be living on different frequencies amongst things that I don't know, we might be literally layered on top of other things that maybe sometimes come in and out of our reality.
That's totally interesting concept. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally open to that possibility. Totally open to that possibility. It almost sounds like, yeah, like an interdimensional. Is it an interdimensional thing? Is it like a residual energy of something maybe that was once there?
Yeah,
I mean,
like
there's just
looking
so
in and out
many
of the
different.
ghost of an
Mhm.
elf or something, or I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah. So I mean, it's just like I've had some experiences with that where I am kind of going, I don't I don't know. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, just like the whole concept of different like holidays, celebrations, like Halloween, and how some cultures viewed Halloween as a time of like opening up, maybe an opening up of portals and maybe
Mm.
different energies coming in. I don't know if you've ever watched Skinwalker Ranch. Have you caught any episodes?
I've caught like the episode I did see that was super fascinating was when that was showing like the ground itself was like could turn on an electric device or something. It was
Mm-hmm.
like electrically charged. That's why I was like, whoa, that's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, in that show, there's a number of episodes where you'll see a UFO and it'll pop in and out. So it's almost like a portal opens up and you'll see this object flying around and it like goes back in and it's gone. So I've always been fascinated with other dimensions and portals, and I think a lot of different cultures and religions talk about portals,
Hmm.
in different ways. But I think that's all very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, and or it makes you wonder if like maybe they're they're of old and they're more advanced than us, and they have like technology that can literally camouflage or become invisible again,
Hmm.
or like I don't really know what's going on here. Like, um, but it's it's uh it's not nothing. I'll tell you
Right.
that.
There's definitely something going
There's
on.
definitely
There's
something.
something going on.
Yeah. All right, Floyd, well, was there anything that I didn't really touch on that you kind of wanted to discuss about? Like, yeah, so tell us a little bit about where people can find your book, and is this your first
Sure.
book?
It's my first book. It's a self-published book, and you can get it at bookbaby.com. And they have a bookshop there, and I would encourage people to go there if they're interested. BookBaby really supports self-published authors, so I would definitely appreciate it if you would go that route. Also, I am on Amazon and Barnes and Noble as well.
I think I got yours on Book Baby, and it came pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think it's really cool. And you would, I mean, did you like the book writing experience? You're gonna continue doing more?
Yes, I am going to do more. It was very challenging, but I love to write. I love to research.
Yeah, you're
I'm an
good at it.
avid, yeah, thank you. I'm an avid reader. I like to travel. It's been a while since I've been overseas, but I just thought to myself, man, I should just put some of this stuff down in a book one of these days, just some of the research I've done and places I've been. So yeah, I do plan on writing other books, but this one, yeah, it was an adventure, and then also being self-published, it's challenging that way as well. But it's been
Yeah.
fun. It's been a labor of love for me.
It's interesting. I have friends that have gone both routes. It feels like your book maybe gets out there more if you manage to get a publisher, but you don't get any money from it ever, basically.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I don't know. So you're kind of screwed one way, half a dozen the other with whichever route you go, because then it's like now you have to do all the all the media or the
Exactly.
publicity for it,
Publicity for it. But to me, it's definitely a labor of love, and I feel like it's my baby. It's mine because I published it. I can do it the way I want to do it. I don't have a publisher telling me what I can and can't do. So I just put something out there, from my heart, and I'm having fun just getting out and talking about my book. And I really appreciate you having me on your show. It's been a lot of fun talking with you. I could talk with you, I'm sure, for hours and hours. And I love the experiences that you shared, your own personal experiences. I love hearing that stuff and stories, and that stuff sticks with me.
Cool. Yeah. I appreciate anybody who's really starts digging into this really, deeply. And yeah, I mean, like there's things in here that I mean, like your research on these little people I had never even heard of. So I mean, it just, the more we start, collecting over, I mean, like there's just more and more and more that you find.
There is.
So it's just like a never ending rabbit hole of awesome.
I try to just reference all the stuff in the book as well to give breadcrumbs to other people that want to dig deeper, because I'm sure there's tons of stuff that I didn't touch on or I missed that I'm hoping someone else can pick up on and elaborate on.
But I mean, you include a lot of the articles that you found some of these things in, and I mean, there's a lot of the old articles that are referenced in here, and I think about that a lot in terms of. So what does mainstream say about these? Were these just crap? These articles just lies, like fictional, like
they just say they mismeasured the bones or misidentified the bones, or they were writing about that to drum up newspaper sales. I don't know. It's just
right, like they were just Charles Dickensing it, just elaborating word count. Yeah, that's what it was. But I don't know. All right. So how do people find you? So we got Book Baby. Do you have a social media presence, anything like that you want people to
I do have a website. It's at theancientgiants.com.
Okay, theancientgiants.com. Okay, cool.
Theancientgiants.com. Absolutely. And I'm just going to try to get out and do more podcasts. I enjoy talking with people like yourself and just sharing my research and hearing about your research and
I found you from Journey to the Truth, or
Journey
to Truth.
Journey to Truth. And in fact, I asked them when I got done, I'm like, hey, do you know of anybody else that would be interested in having me on? They're like, oh, the Nikkianajones show. And so I immediately went and started watching some of your podcasts, and I thought, oh, this seems like a fun show to be on. And
cool.
I reached out to you, and here we are.
It's so funny because I had already ordered.
I know. I asked. I was gonna.
And I was send you a free book. I was like, well, I was gonna read your book and then reach out to you, dude. So
that's awesome. I know when you said that, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a good fit because she's obviously interested, in having me on as a guest. So I appreciate that. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we'll have to have you on again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to be on again. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, bye, Mr. Floyd. Thank you so much.
Bye. It's been a pleasure, Nikki. Take care.
Cool.
Bye-bye.